Hi guys, it's Michał from 3D Shaker. Today I want to show you how I created this exact image in Blender. I will walk you through all the important steps as well as some tips and tricks so you can achieve the same result in your own personal project. Let's get right into it. Okay, so our first step in creating this scene will be blocking out the main geometry. What does it exactly mean? It means getting the overall shape of the image with most important, biggest objects just as blocks. This helps us set up the camera correctly because we can see our most important objects in the frame and we can already create a good composition just based on these blocks. In this case, our main geometry will be just these two planes as two levels of surface and a cube representing the stone wall. So, the next step is setting up the camera. If you're trying to recreate our reference image, what is very useful is adding the reference photo as a background image in our camera. This way we can clearly see if we're matching the perspective or not. With setting up the camera, the most important thing that we would be doing is of course playing with the position of the camera as well as the rotation. But here you have to remember that in your image, all the vertical lines have to be parallel to each other, so they have to be going straight from the bottom to the top. And to achieve that, instead of changing the X rotation of the camera, you have to change the shift in the camera settings. This way, you will change the visible part in the camera, but all the lines will remain straight. Another setting you will be playing with is the focal length. For this type of shots, it will be often around 25mm, but it is 30 for that case. A pretty useful tip, sometimes if the reference photo you haven't been modified much, it can hold the information about the camera and its parameters while taking the picture, so also the focal length. Okay, now let's start developing our scene. First, we are going to model the stars. Really simple, just a couple of boxes. For building them, I have used an array modifier just to speed things up a little bit and keep the same distance between the blocks. Also, a little tip worth remembering, nothing in our world is perfect sharp. When modeling objects in Blender, most of them should have some bevel on the edges. Also these stars. For them, I have added a 2mm bevel. The stairs are done. Now, let's get into the stone wall. Here, modeling it would be a nightmare and the result probably not as good as well. That's why we are going to use pre-made model from Quixel Bridge. Quixel Bridge is almost a must-have when creating all types of different environments. They have lots of really good, high-quality models. The reason behind their realistic looks is in the technique they were made. These models are not built by hand in some 3D software, but made by photoscanning the real-world objects, and that's why they look so good. Now that we have our rock wall model, let's import it to the scene and place it instead of our block placeholder. As you can see, the model is a bit smaller than what we need, that's why I have scaled it a bit to fit better. While you can scale this type of models, you also have to be careful with it, not to overdo it, because if the scale will differ much from the real world scale compared to the other objects in the image, like trees, bushes, etc., our eyes will easily pick it up and it will ruin the realistic feeling of the image. To fill the frame all the way to the right, I have just used an array modifier and set it so there is no gap between the objects and they look quite natural, like the real stone wall would look like. Now that we have our rock wall placed correctly, we can add the textures provided with this model. But to do that, first we need some lighting. For the lighting, I will use HDRI and I would advise you to use them as often as possible because they are the easiest way of getting a natural and realistic lighting. To get our HDRI, we are going to visit everyone's favorite HDRI website, Polyheaven. If you don't know the site, I 100% recommend you to get familiar with it. They have really a lot of good HDRIs, all free and on the CC0 license. For this scene, I will use exactly this HDRI. You may also think what resolution to use. So, when it comes to exactly lighting the scene, it doesn't really matter. You can use just 1K, which will be lighter in size, resulting in more responsive and faster viewport. Pretty much the only case you would use a higher resolution HDRI is when you have a visible part of it. In our case, we can see quite a lot of the sky, that's why we will use 1K for lighting and 16K for visible background. I assume that all of you knows how to set up an HDRI, but maybe not all of you knows how to set two HDRIs, one for lighting and second one for visible sky, so I'll show you that right now. First, you set up your HDRI normally, as always. Here we are going to use our 1K resolution HDRI, Then you can duplicate it or just create another node setup. Change the HDRI to the one you want to have as visible background. It is going to be the 16K one for us. Then by holding the Ctrl Shift and dragging one background node to the other one with right click, we can create a mix between the two. Now for the factor, we are going to use the light path node and the camera ray. And just like that, we are using two different HDRIs, one for lighting the scene and other one for visible background. Now that we have our HDRI setup, we can play with the rotation to find the best lighting angle. For now, we can plug only our 1K HDRI so the scene is working faster, and we can plug the 16K somewhere at the end. Normally, I go every 30 degrees to test different lighting opportunities, so first 0, then 30, 60, so on and so on. Here, because we are recreating the image from the reference, we can see where the sun is, so I just move it so it matches with the image. Sometimes you may need to change the Z location a bit down or a bit up, depending on what you need, but also remember that you can do it only a bit, because with moving it too much, the lighting will look weird and unrealistic. So here I have moved it by a -0.2 to get more light on the stairs and on the foreground. Also, don't worry that the flare of the sun is in a bit different place than in the reference photo, because for visible background you have a separate HDRI, and we'll change it there without making any changes to the lighting itself. With the lighting already set, we can add the textures to our stone wall. All the Quixel Bridge models come with all the needed textures, so in this case normal, specular, roughness and albedo. The way I like to set up textures is to start with normal to see how much small details I'm adding, then I can plug in specular and roughness. With roughness I will use color ramp to adjust it and make it more contrast. Then in the end I will use albedo and also modify it with RGB curve and desaturate it a bit. After the stone wall we can add the texture to the stairs. Exactly same method, only this time without the normal. And because we have modeled the stairs, we also need to UV unwrap it first. If you are using an array modifier, you will get these visible texture repetitions. To fix that, just go to the array modifier, open the UV stub and decrease the two offsets. When creating this stone or marble shaders, I can show you one tip that will add this really nice small details to the image, which is subsurface scattering. Depending on the stone, sometimes the light can pass through on the thinner surfaces, for example on the edges. So that's why we are going to do that here as well. To do that, open the subsurface tab and for now change the weight to 1, then we need to change the radius to all ones to get the white color. Adjust the scale and then plug the albedo to the weight, but add a color ramp in between. Now adjust it so there's a high contrast between black and white. This way the darker parts of the stone will not pass the light through and the lighter parts will. And this way we can create this really nice marble stone effect. Now it's time for the grass. And we're going to create it with particle systems. Exactly 2 of them in that case. First, we need to get the grass model. One used in this image is from textures.com, another great site for both textures and also some foliage models. Let's import the grass to the scene and add it to the separate collection. Also in the meantime we can organize our collections a bit just so it is more comfortable to work with. Now let's add the textures. With plants there is also a little twist in the way you set up the shader. While the normal roughness and albedo map is set up in exact same way, there is also an opacity and translucency map. Let me show you how to use it. Let's add the translucency map and plug it into the color to the translucent BSDF. Now let's add these two shaders together with an add shader node and mix it with principled BSDF. That way, by sliding the factor value, you can control how much translucency we have. Last thing is to add the transparent BSDF, mix it with our shader, and as a factor, plug in the opacity map. With our grass models ready to use, now we can create our particle system. Let's select our ground, add a new particle system, and rename it to grass, just as a good habit of keeping things organized. Open the render tab and change the render as to the collection. Then select our collection of grass models. As you can see, the grass is already there, but it's tiny. So let's change the scale to something like 0.2. We can also just change the scale randomness to something like 0.4. As we are here, we can also just check the object rotation option as well as a peak random. As you can see, our grass is laying on its side instead of standing up, so to fix that, we are going to rotate our grass models with transform pivot point set to individual origins by 90 degrees on y-axis. And now they look good. We can also check the advanced checkbox as well as the rotation option that just came up, add some value to the face and to the randomize face option. Now, as you can see, our grass is distributed on the whole plane, but we need it to be only visible in the camera. Having this whole plane populated with particles would pretty much kill our PC, so we need to get it only where we need it. To do that, there are two options, both including using the weight paint. Whenever you are using the weight paint, you have quite a dense geometry, so we are going to subdivide our plane right now. So the first option is to just manually pen the weight in the places where we want it, which is completely fine, but some scenarios a bit tedious. The other option is to use the weight lifter add-on, which will automatically make a weight paint group depending on the camera distance and what it sees. Now it was time to tune in our particle settings. I have played a bit with density to find the right value for now. Then a cool thing you can do is at the bottom of the particle settings you can add a texture, which will really add some nice variation to the grass and make it look less uniform. You can use the clouds type, and for the influence, check the density as well as the hair length. With this type of settings, remember not to really pay attention to what numbers exactly I'm using, but to the result. In your own project, to get a nice result, the numbers could be much different, so just pay attention to the result and not to the numbers. Just a quick reminder I forgot to mention while recording, make sure to change the distribution option to random instead of jittered, so the particles are distributed randomly on the surface and not in the rows. As you can see, the density is way too low, but another thing that we should do is to add some grass texture to the ground. Again, standard shader setup, nothing complicated. Now we can come back to our particles and decrease the amount. Now it's looking way better. Then, optionally, you can tweak some settings a bit more just to test it and see if there's anything you can change to make it look even better. Next step was to add a bit more detail to our grass. Overall, when creating some environments or things like grass, forest, etc., one particle system is rarely enough. Pretty much the more you add, the more detailed and more realistic the image gets, of course without overdoing it. But for all those surfaces, you could add something like 10 different particle systems to get a really nice detailed image. Although here, we are going to add only one more, it will also be enough. The particle system I have added is an orchard grass, so just something a bit different, taller, to add more detail. Next step would be to do the same to our other plane, the one above the stone wall. We just need to make a weight map, and then we can freely use our existing particle systems, only change the density. When doing any changes to the new particle system, remember to make it a single user, so the changes you make won't affect the other particle system. With grass ready, we can now adjust the shader of grass a bit to make it more like in our reference. Next step will be adding the trees, and here I want to show something special. We have joined forces with Polygonic, and now our trees from 3D Shaker are available as an asset pack for Ngon add-on. What does it mean? It means that now our assets have botanic features like all-in-one add-on powered by Ngon, snap to the ground with one click, easy adjustment of brightness, hue, or even the season like spring or winter. And my personal favorite, one-click animations. To show you how good it is, just take a look at this short animation of this exact scene that was made with this add-on. If you are interested, all the links are below in the description. Also don't forget to write in the comments what you think about it, and maybe if you have already tried it, be welcome to share your thoughts. Now you can come back to Blender and use this add-on in further creation of our scene, because it's so much easier and faster than doing it all by hand. Let's open the End tab, go to the polygonic add-on, click Browse Assets, and click on which screen you want the add-on to pop up. Go to the shaker trees, and you can search for a cherry tree. Scroll down a bit, and let's pick these two. We can close the tab, select our tree, and snap it to the ground. Let's move it somewhere here, and now we can click on the random button to randomize the transform of the tree. This one looks pretty good. Now we can make it a bit bigger, and do the same for the other tree. We can duplicate this one, move it to the other side, and again, same thing. Let's go to the render view and take a look at our trees. They are looking not so good right now, so let's modify them a bit. What we can do is either go to our Ngon add-on and in botanic section, change the values of brightness, hue, etc. Or for even more control over the shader, we can convert the trees to editable, and in the leaf shader we have our standard 3D shaker node, which lets you control all the values very easily. The biggest difference is here we can also play around with the translucency values, which are quite important for the plants. With just a few changes, now our trees are looking really good and we can go further with our scene. Next couple of steps will be just adding some bushes as well as some additional trees in the background. Again, all the steps are the same: add plants with Ngon add-on, snap them to the ground, randomize the transform a bit, and adjust the shader. One more cool tip I can show you: instead of manually adding hundreds of trees in the background, you can just add a plane and make a particle system with the trees. It will definitely save us a lot of time. So, this is how our scene is looking right now. Pretty much the only thing left is to add some more details, like some stone plates, plants on the right side, the tall grass just above the stone wall, or the chairs and table, which, by the way, are also from our 3D Shaker library. So this exact model and many more different furniture and decoration you can also find at our site 3dshaker.com. So for the plants on the right, I have just made a different ground with different material, also scattered some debris on top of it, just to add a bit more detail. The plants themselves I have just placed manually, since it's only like 5 objects. The tall grass is again just a plane with particle system made with couple grass clumps. Now I have again plugged in the 16K resolution HDRI as a visible background and placed it correctly. With that I have changed the contrast to medium high and adjusted some of the materials because they got a bit too dark. Overall, I just look at the image at every part of it, try to see what is maybe looking a bit off and try to correcting it. So just small tweaks to make the final result look the best it can. In the compositor, I have added some more contrast, raised the midtones a bit, also added small vignette. Really nothing complicated, you can look at the nodes. One thing that is very cool is the Better Bloom node, and it is completely free for download, so big shout out to the creator, because the default Better Bloom is not the best in my opinion, and I always use this one from his nodes and it just looks really nice. So at this point our scene is pretty much complete, we can go on and render that image. As an additional thing, what we can always do at the end is just to play around with the lighting. Try different HDRIs, rotations. You can always find some new opportunities for different mood, different emotions, or maybe even the same emotion but just overall better lighting. Our main lighting we've created is more happy, upbringing, but also a bit dramatic because the lighting is in front of us. So maybe try to search for something even more calm or even more dramatic lighting. Just play around with it. So this would be the end of our video. I really hope that I did teach something today and that it will help you create even more beautiful images than the ones we've already created. Of course, don't forget to share your thoughts or ask any questions you might have down below in the comments. Also, if you are interested in the Ngon add-on or our library of models, check the links in the description. We have really a lot of different high quality ready to use products, from furnishing, decorations, plants, all the way to the ready finished scenes. So I'm sure everyone will find something they like. And talking about finished scenes, you can also buy this exact scene with just a couple different models, as well as just a white box instead of the rock wall. But of course, I showed you where you can get this exact model from, so there's no problem in changing it. But everything else, like the lighting, is exactly the same. Additionally, you get a couple more lighting setups, the ones you can see on the screen right now, with just a bit different mood, so you can see how the nodes are looking for them as well. The scene is available right now on Blender Market, and the link is also in the description, so if you like these images, you can get it right away. And finally, if you liked the video, drop a like and subscribe to the channel if you want to see more tutorials. See you next time, bye bye.